Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Tim Hall with Still Gold, and we are here with some incredible musicians and artists chatting about our professional careers as well as our inspirations. We have Bonnie Brown, Jonathan Ulman, and Christopher Klaxton. We're super stoked to jump into some conversation about what we do and what inspires us to continue to making the work that we do make. So just a little bit of information about me. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I came to Boston in 2013 to work at Berklee College of Music and met the Brothers Gold in around 2017. I officially joined the band in 2019, and it's been incredible. I'm a saxophonist by trade, but also a poet and music producer. And then we'll have, how about we have Bonnie Brown jump in first to telling us a little bit about who you are and how did you arrive to where you are right now in terms of your professional career?
Well, I grew up in Southern California. My married name is Bonnie Brown, but my Boston Symphony name is Bonnie Bewick. So I go by that in the orchestra. I grew up in California, went to University of Michigan, and then real near Detroit there. And then ended up at Curtis Institute of Music. Pretty much right out of Curtis, I got into the Boston Symphony, which was a thrill and a highlight for me. And I've been in this orchestra for over 30 years. So kind of what makes this being part of this group here interesting is that about 15 years ago I started playing traditional Irish and Celtic music. So that's sort of the antidote to the classical side of things. And while it seems like it just really supports my craft in upholding my musical game with the Boston Symphony, and then having this yin-yang sort of experience with playing in a band with my brother, singer-songwriter Ken Bewick, who lives on the West Coast in Santa Cruz, California, and Larry Wolf, who's the associate principal bass player in the Boston Symphony.
Awesome.
Very cool. That was awesome.
Really cool. Shout out to Michigan. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go blue.
Awesome. John, how about yourself?
I'm good, man. So my name is Jonathan Ulman. I play drums in Still Gold. I think I joined probably, I can't remember, maybe 2017, right around when Torch Song had come out. I played a little bit on that record, and then I was in the band to play live stuff and just went from there. I'm a session drummer, but I also work alongside Tim at Berklee College of Music in the drum department. I've been there for about 7 years, and Tim, prior to switching over to faculty, was right above me, like literally above my office on the next floor up, so he would always come down, and it's been a real pleasure getting to know him, both from a professional perspective at Berklee and actually getting to play with him in Still Gold. It's been a real treat. So that's why I spend my time. I'm based in Boston, and I grew up here. I never really wanted to leave. I know that session musicians tend to go off to session cities, but I built a little bit of a career here, and I love the city, and it's equidistant to go to the West Coast in Europe. So that's all I needed.
Nice. Thank you. Chris, how are you doing?
Good. This week has been really nice. It's been a week where my wife and I have kept our phones plugged in the bedroom and refused to look at them very often. So as you might imagine, our mood is quite elevated. We've gotten outside a lot recently. So as long as I'm not necessarily taking in every news article or every word out of the latest White House briefing, I'm feeling okay. And lately I've been getting back to music through our engagements with Still Gold, working on our new record and our collaboration with the BSO. I guess I met you guys, Tim, we met probably 2 or 3 years ago. John, we met 4 or 5 years ago. I met Ark around 5 or 6 years ago, and I met Mo, the captain, I guess, of that ship, maybe in 2008. I was playing a hip hop night at a venue, and I just watched his set and was totally knocked out. So it might have been as late as a year or two later, when I was just hungry to be involved in hip hop, I sent him a message on MySpace and was like, "Yo, I'm that guy, Chris. I play the trumpet and the keyboards, and I don't know if you remember me, but if you're around and you ever would want to make music, or you need any of my instruments on an album, but just give a holler and I'll be there." And that's what happened. So since then, since about 2008 or so, he's invited me to record on his albums and be a part of the band and play live gigs. So that's been one of the most fulfilling projects of my recent decade.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and plus all you guys, and now that we're all friends, you know, and now that we've entered some really strange months in the world, you know, I'm just realizing how rare it is to be in a group where everybody really loves the music first and foremost, and spending time with each other. And even though you all play professionally and we're diverse characters, I guess,
yeah,
it's really rare and really special that everybody loves music in the same way, and that we all kind of have it surprisingly musically like traditional and conservative elements of where we're rooted in music. So the fact that we're all this band of brothers forging through trying to get our words heard and felt, like we're really kind of, I think, bonded by some old school stuff that I really appreciate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember a quote that's always stuck with me. Willie Nelson used to say that with his bands, he said, first priority is find a bunch of people that you like to hang out with, and then the music comes after that.
Totally.
So I think that's exactly the order of operations for this band too.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, kind of speaking on that, where would you all say the love for music started, or where do you think that the love of music, you know, was what's the catalyst for that for you, would you say, within your life? You know?
Well, I would say maybe the proto stuff, like the real early stuff, was just my parents liked to have the radio on, and we had a piano in the house, but my parents weren't particularly, or they aren't particularly musical themselves. They don't really play, but they sang and they whistled along, and they had the radio in the car on all the time. So that kind of proto stuff set in. And I grew up in New Hampshire, but near Haverhill, Mass, and Lawrence, and it's not, you know, the cultural epicenter of the world, but it was close to Boston. So as a middle schooler and high schooler, I grew up going to see the BSO and the Pops all the time. It was close enough to Portsmouth and Portland, and the school I went to, while it wasn't particularly glamorous, had a great jazz program and classical teachers that came and visited and hang at the school. So I got to study with a trumpet player named J Dilla, who was a huge influence and plays a lot in Boston in this area. So it just happened to be a good place to live at a good time, being exposed to different styles and getting some practical, getting your hands dirty a little bit and getting to play a little bit of all of it and taste it all.
I grew up in the LA area, and my dad was in the military. So before that, we moved around a lot, but from the age of 10 on, so those real formative years for me were in the LA area. And I had a really excellent violin teacher who had a studio of really amazing and very inspiring musicians. And we all got to be really good friends. We're all still communicating and getting together when we can. And as you were saying, Chris, the home environment, neither of my parents were musicians either, but my brother and I went that direction, but different directions, because he was a rock and roll guitar player and I was just this strictly classical violinist. And we didn't start playing music together until about 15 years ago. But, you know, we grew up with music in the house. Both my parents sang, and so it was always surrounding us, and Ken went his direction and I went mine, but the collaboration was always really important by way of playing in orchestras and chamber music. And the summer camp that I went to, Tim, have you heard of Interlochen up in the northern Michigan? I went to Interlochen pretty much every year.
Yeah.
And that was very formative for me. And I still know people. There are folks in the Boston Symphony who spent summers or even years at Interlochen.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I went to Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp, and Interlochen was like our rival.
Oh
Our
yeah.
summer camp being, rambunctious young kids, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, Blue Lake is the best.
Yeah, I
Uh,
remember that. Yeah. Really strong memories of those years.
yeah, for me, growing up in a household that played music, that loves the arts. My dad is originally from Savannah, Georgia, and my mom is from Detroit. But growing up in Motown and being around Black music, being around artists, in a city that really invested in youth in the arts was a huge support system for me. I think having the validation and the encouragement, as well as access to actual spaces. I mean, for me, that I started making money doing gigs at 17 years old, playing around the city of Detroit. So for have to have that, like, I think, onboarding into the life of music as an artist, and to like have the encouragement as a young person to explore my musical talents, and to also know that those talents can also turn into a career, where it was like an environment that for me that truly imprinted the possibility of like, yo, you can live a life being an artist, and you can sustain yourself with that, and so forth. So it's been really dope.
Yeah, that's
How
such a
about the
gift.
story of you all's instruments? Like, what drew you to the instrument that you all are playing now?
I can start that one. So my parents got me piano lessons, and so like 2 piano lessons in, the teacher said to my parents, "This is not the right instrument for him. Just for whatever reason, can't sit still, can't focus on the simple sort of practicing of the piano." So they said, "All right, what would be a good one?" He said, "I'd say you try drums for him." So my parents had got me, I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. They got me just a snare drum from a neighbor, and that had a stand, and a cymbal that did not have a stand. And so my brother would sit next to me with a dowel and hold the cymbal on next to me while I, tried basic patterns. And it was an immediate appreciation that I'd not experienced even at such a young age. And what it ended up being, as I learned later, is the repetitiveness of playing drums, the sort of the patterns that repeat, the symmetry of what is happening while I play the instrument is very therapeutic for me. So as I grew up later in life, I found that there were different things that allowed me to feel calm in certain situations. Like in school, I learned best when I made the same pattern in my notebook over and over and over and over and over, and I could listen better. And so drums became this sort of calming outlet for me, and still is. And granted, I have made somewhat of a career out of it, and I get to do it on a regular basis. I would do it regardless if it ever was something that I could pursue as a career, because it is my yoga or my meditation. For whatever amount of time I'm playing, the rest of the world shuts off for me, and that is something that I need, just being sort of an anxious person in general. But not going into psychology of how my brain works, but there's something that is very important and very therapeutic for me when playing the instruments, where my foot, each of my limbs are doing something on their own, but coming together to create a pattern of sorts. It's so fulfilling for me, and shuts my brain down for a little bit of time, and that's been very helpful for my whole life.
Wow.
Amen.
Bonnie, how about yourself?
I think violin chose me. I started, I guess, late compared to some other people. I started when I was 8. Like I said, neither of my parents were musicians, so I didn't have somebody offering it to me. I started in the school music program, and it just, I don't know, it just became something that I I want to say I loved it, but I think it was a fun hobby, and all the other things I tried in my life, I gave up. You know, like you have a chapter where you're playing piano, and you have a chapter where you're, you know, acting, or all the other things I tried, they just sort of fell by the wayside, but violin just always stuck. And as I said, I had a collection of really inspiring friends and colleagues around me who played. And I was fairly competitive, as I think probably a lot of people in the Boston Symphony are. And so it was always sort of my goal to just be edged, like on the top of that pack. And that was always a challenge for me. It's not that everything came easy on the violin, but it was so, I loved, there are so many great violinists out there, more now than there were, but there were so many inspiring recordings to listen to and live performances to go to, and ensembles to be a part of, that I was always really, really inspired by listening and by copying and by just taking it all in. One of my violin teachers called me the best little monkey she had ever had, because I was always imitating. And it seemed like any style or any type of piece that as long as I heard it, I could latch onto it and just really assimilate that style. So it just became a really expressive outlet for me. And then the collaborative nature of it was always just really key for me.
Awesome. Thank you.
I also started kind of almost randomly. I was a musical kid, and I liked to walk up to the piano and improvise as a kid, plunk things out. But I was always really scared. Sometimes I still am, just terrified of new experiences, get really anxious. So my mom knew she had to like trick me into taking piano lessons. So she told me to get in the car, we're going to get ice cream. And then we just showed up to some other building, and she kicks me out of the car and says, "I'll be back in an hour."
Wow.
And I had so much fun. She knew I would, right? If she told me where we were going, I would have thought about it. And I thought we were going for ice cream, and I had the best time ever. So since that first day, music lessons were never stressful or like an authority figure that I had to please. You know what I mean? Like, it really helped me form relationships with older people and like older people and like teachers and want to be a teacher. So as I said, I got a trumpet a few years later at the age of 10. I was too pudgy and short to hold anything else, so I got the trumpet. And it worked out great. I took to it quickly, and I had so much fun. Like John was saying, it was therapeutic and kind of calmed me down a bit. But it's how I learned discipline through high school years, because I was, not a troublemaker per se. I wasn't the most focused, disciplined kid, but trumpet really kept me in line and taught me how to learn, and exposed me to classical music and jazz music. And I suffered a little bit being from New Hampshire and being a white kid that loved jazz trumpet. I suffered a bit from imposter syndrome. And although I knew I loved it and it was a social music and I had fun in school, a real turning point was when I started to study with a trumpet player named Clark Terry, who was in Duke Ellington's big band, Count Basie's big band, mentor to Miles Davis and Quincy Jones. Like, the dude is one of the godfathers of the music. And to have him not only willingly teach me, but like refer to me as his grandson and bring me on the road and like take time to invite me and reassure me that this is above all things a collaborative, like music period is a collaborative thing, and without people and without openness and without kind of like kicking down some barriers, then it wouldn't exist at all. So like being made comfortable and invited into the music by someone like Clark around the age of 18, 19, like that's probably when I first felt like, wow, music is really, it can be for me. I don't need to consider myself an imposter, or kind of, I maybe thought that I was stretching, milking a hobby for too much, And since then, and being invited to the party in that way, I felt like it can be a living, and there's more to it than just something that keeps me busy. It's deeper than that, it's older than that, and it can be more, it can provide more than that. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely. that was beautiful. that was awesome. Speaking of inspiration, we had you all share some music with us, songs that inspire you or have a certain place for a place in your hearts and whatnot. So we'll play a few from each of you. How about we start off with Bonnie? Are there any particular, there of the songs that you shared, is there one that you want to do a little snippet of and talk about?
The first song I chose was Harry Belafonte, and that harks back to what we were starting this conversation with what influenced you early on, and we were surrounded by music. So yeah. I think we all know everything Harry Belafonte has put out, and I just threw that out because that was always kind of a happy place when that music came on in our house. But maybe the second one, the Stephane Grappelli influence.
Got you. That one I have to find on YouTube. Let me pull that up here.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's the
yeah.
I can't remember the name of the album. It's a live album, and he made this album live with Dave Grisman. And I really, in my copying phase, when I was first getting into this, actually, I memorized that whole song right there that you're going to play before I even played folk music. It was just, it just lit me on fire. And I've always been a big fan of Stephane Grappelli from high school on. I've listened to everything that he's put out, from the earliest Hot Club de France to the very end. And I was so honored when I got into the Boston Symphony. I was so excited. I actually got to see him live a couple times in Boston and got to talk to him afterwards. And it just, it's a highlight of my life. He's
awesome.
An amazing, amazing musician, influenced me so strongly. I had several musical projects during my career. One time when I was actually featured with the Boston Pops, playing some tunes that Stephane Grappelli wrote for himself and Yehudi Menuhin, sort of like a dueling side-by-side violinist. And I got to play the Stephane Grappelli part, and the concertmaster of the Boston Pops got to play the Yehudi Menuhin part. So I've really, absorbed his music my whole life. And this right here was really what propelled me in that direction.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, let me make sure that you all can hear this. Let's see here.
The first bit of it is sort of a cadenza-like thing, and then after about like a minute, it goes into the gypsy jazz kind of thing. So I don't know whether you want to hunt and peck during the tune, but it's all great. So
yes, we'll play portions of it. We probably won't be able to play the full length, but we will.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Can you all hear this?
cool.
Wow.
Very cool.
It's so beautiful. There's tension, there's excitement, there's joy, there's um, inquisitive kind of nature to it. Like I just love it. It actually reminds me of listening to Joshua Redman, who is a saxophonist, and that's when I kind of was introduced to gypsy jazz of some sort of stylistic playing and performance. It just brought me instantly to like listening to him growing up as well. That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, it has some klezmer influences too, just the gypsy jazz kind of thing, that Eastern European, mid-Eastern European style. I've listened to it ever since then. I love klezmer music and that minor swing, and just everything in that era of music just really draws me in. So.
Yeah, the Romani sound is amazing.
Say again?
I said that Romani, that gypsy sound is incredible.
Definitely.
Awesome. How about other songs, that any of the other tunes that you would like to play?
Well, I couldn't decide between the three Talking Heads songs I chose, and anything by Talking Heads. Have you all seen his American Utopia? Oh, that was one of the best shows I've ever seen. Talking Heads got me through college, so anything in that category, anything that you played of those three would be, you all know it so well. So
Cool.
yeah. When I started getting into Talking Heads, it was when the later albums were coming out. So I included the song "And She Was," because that song, like I'm rocking out to that song, and then I went back to all the earlier catalog, and just like I said, like every day at this really intense conservatory, Curtis Institute of Music, me and Julie Triquet, who lived right above me, we would just rock out to either David Grisman or Talking Heads or any number of things in that just in that category. And I swear, it was calming, balancing, got me through some tough times.
Awesome. Well, we can play some of it here. And She Was.
Hey! And she was lying in the grass, and she could hear the highway breathing, and she could see a nearby factory. She's making sure she is not dreaming. See the lights of the neighbor's house. Now she's starting to rise. Take a minute to concentrate, and she opens up her eyes. The world was moving, she was right there with it, and she was. The world was moving, she was floating above it, and she was. And she was.
Love it.
And she was drifting through the backyard.
Nice.
So good.
Dig it.
Like grooving. The bass line. Boom, 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 boom,
Bass
boom,
lines
boom.
in Talking Heads. The bass lines in Talking Heads are just so epic and so amazing, and the driving percussion, it just always makes you, it's always uplifting. It always makes you want to rock out. And the lyrics are also just super introspective, or just make you think. And there's so many layers to get through. You can understand them on one level when you're 18, and then you can come back to it when you're 40 and just, hey, what does he mean by that? And what was that all about? And I've just,
Yeah.
His book, How Music Works, is on my reading list. I've heard it's really excellent. Has anyone read his book?
No?
I've heard it's
No.
awesome.
Awesome.
I'm writing it down then.
Cool. Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, we'll jump. How about John? You shared a few songs
Yeah.
with us as well.
So I kind of put a note in the email. It's hard to think about, and I think when we originally thought about this idea was like started with one song, and I remember Mo being like, "No, there's no way that we can do one song. There's too many songs that have like impacts on you in some respects." So it's hard for me to ever pick a favorite song, but there are songs that were the catalysts, like you said, to certain, you know, um, certain pivotal moments in your life for whatever reason. So I picked three. One of them is probably in my top three songs of all time, and the other two are more like these were stepping stones, but they'll always be, you know, important memories for me as to, you know, me moving forward. So I would say the first one is "Nothing Can Change This Love" by Sam Cooke. That to me is probably in my eyes, the most beautiful song that I've ever heard. And a lot of that was from my parents, played a lot of doo-wop and soul music when I was growing up. That's how I used to go to bed. That was how I was probably the only person in like third or fourth grade that could sing most of like the Platters and like the Coasters and all of the like doo-wop, you know, artists of that time, because that music, there's something about that music that the sentiments and the lyrics are they're so simple. They're so it's about love, and like, you know, it's not that time period was different, but that's how people brought their message across. So the songs were universally beautiful and relatable to a lot of people, and just the simplicity of the music was very captivating for me. Like we had talked about, it's like I like things that are simple. Complicated stuff screws with my head too much. So that song always stuck with me. And actually later in life, when I was my daughter was born, that was the first song that I ever like danced with her to. And it's always just been a very important song to me. And I don't think it's hard for me to ever have another song compared to it. So that was what my introduction to falling in love with music was that song. And of course, Sam Cooke in general, but that song in particular. So if you want to play a little bit, I'm sure everybody knows the song.
If I go a million miles away, I'd write a letter each and every day. 'Cause honey, nothing can ever change this love I have for you. Make me weep, and you can make me cry. See me coming, and you can pass me by. But honey, nothing can't ever change this love I have for you. Lord, you're the apple of my eye, your cherry pie, and oh, your cake and ice cream, and all your sugar and spice. Everything nice. You're the girl of my dreams. But if you wanted to leave me and roam, when you got back, I'd just say welcome home. 'Cause honey, nothing can ever change this love I have for you.
So there's like there was an innocence about the lyrics, you know, back then. And I would be on call when my daughter's mom was take a nap at night, and I would walk my daughter around the house and hold her and just hum that song to her. And it reminded me of what it was like when I was a kid, and I would hear that song. And as you can tell, you know, we get to a point in our careers now where it's like sounds and recording are so like, you know, oh, that was the wrong, you know, snare drum used on that song, or the bass doesn't come out, you know, it should be like more forefront. It was like, nope, it was Sam Cooke's voice. And everything just kind of was a foundation for him to do what he does. I mean, the lyrics are as like perfect as you could ever write. It's like what you aspire to be as a person is just a loving and caring person. You want to do that for somebody else. And that song just always stuck to me. It's very simple and it's perfect. It's like that one song that I wish I had played on. I was born 40 years too late or something like that.
Yeah.
And that, but because I know, you know, getting sort of short on time, I want Chris again. So my next song, I would do the Grand Puba one, which is 360 Tim. And I'll lead into this with a little bit. So as I started playing the drums and as I started getting, you know, I got a drum set and I started getting a little more limb independence playing the drums, I didn't know what to play. I would just play like whatever was on the kit. And my brother, so this was like late 80s, early 90s, my brother was super, super big into hip hop. And that was the only music that I could go find in his room because I couldn't play my drums to the vinyl that my parents had. He had cassettes and he was big into perhaps the greatest like years of hip hop that were ever, you know, around, which was the late 80s, early 90s. And so this song was the very first song that I learned to play from start to finish, like along with a song. One of the things I do when I talk to kids about learning to play the drums is a lot of kids try to play their favorite song, which could be like Enter Sandman or some crazy crap like that, you know. For me, I always say play a hip hop song. The beat doesn't change for the whole song. So if you start from the beginning and you're rough and you're trying to get, you know, grab onto the beat, you've got 3 minutes to lock in. And that gives you an opportunity to, you know, get confident on your instrument to say, you know, I wasn't very good in the beginning of the song, but I stuck with it. The song's still going along. And by the end of it, I was grooving right along with it. That's how you learn to play an instrument, not like a metal song or something that changes so frequently that you never get a chance to like really embrace what's going on. So I learned to play hip hop, and that was the reason that I fell in love with the instrument, because it gives you confidence to go, holy crap, I just played along to a song. I've only been playing this instrument for, you know, a few months kind of thing. So this song happened to be that song that I learned to play start to finish. And you know what? I use these same beats like, you know, 30 years later.
That's awesome, yeah.
Yeah. There's just one thing I wanna say. The really real, yo. There's just one thing I wanna say. Copy. There's just one thing I wanna say. We gonna hit it down like this, y'all know the flavor. There's just one thing I wanna say. Alamo, is you with me? What goes around comes back around again. Stud Doogie, is you with me? What goes around comes back around again. SOS, is you with me? What goes around comes back around again. Yeah, this how we gonna bust it down, y'all. You know the flavor. You know what time is it? Check it, yo. This how we flow. Here comes the booba, and you know I won't fake it. Usually bust records on getting butt naked. Made for the Benzie. Drive a nigga skinsy, pump the tape, grab your dinky with the pool bar frenzy. Come on, honey, thing, don't ya try to eject slow downs. What you say once my joint gets erect? Some try to copy, but they just can't sketch it. Some try to follow, but they just can't catch it. With the boom, boom, tap, yeah, all of that. I'm living fat, me fall off, there be none of that. See who's the one to flip it? Quick to tell a nigga to zip it, so drink the 40, cause we ain't got time to sip it. Grand Puba got body. Kick some of them, some of those, and some yachty. As dope as they come, suckers sing or hum. Don't try to step to this, you know you shit is slum. First batter up, well here's the pitch, it's a curve. Second batter up because the first got served. The one who arouses a browse for a blouse. Kick styles by the piles as I leave a chill for miles. Skis when I please, hit from here to Tel Aviv. I'm getting G's, no more time for the line of free cheese. Here's the 411, huh? The one who gets the job done, I know you know the flavor of the Puba. Yeah, nah. This how we bump it, yo. You know what I'm saying? Big Jeff in the house. We gonna move it like this.
So just to follow that up, basically what it was I didn't have to worry about anything switching. I could just close my eyes, lock into the pocket. You know, I didn't know that it was a pocket, but I knew that it wasn't going to change. And I knew that I could just, follow along with that and feel like I was a part of, something that was going on. And like, that's how I learned to play drums. And actually years later, one of my biggest assets as a session drummer is having a good pocket and good timing. If you have that, you're going to be a very successful studio musician. And learning to play hip hop from the very beginning is exactly what was the gateway into, that being a very important aspect to how I get a lot of studio work.
Awesome, that's super dope, and it's really smart, and because you can still encourage individuals who are wanting to learn, particularly drums or any instrument. I often start off with the like, hey, find a song that you really like, that you enjoy, that in a way, from listening to it, and then jump in. But the particular note of like, hey, hip hop music often in terms of the drum beat is just a loop, and that's a great starting place to just like learn and find your footing.
Yeah, and for somebody that like quits things all the time, if you don't feel good about it, like if I tried to do something like a song that had bridges and choruses and verses and second bridges, I may have just decided like, nah, this isn't fun. So it actually worked out that I chose the right thing to start with.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for sharing those.
Hell yeah.
Now, Chris, it was dope seeing yours because like it was. I found it interesting because like I see J Dilla, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then you had this like super rock song. I was like, whoa! I was not expecting that one either. So I'm stoked to hear what you wanna listen to.
Yeah, I thought the challenge was like near impossible. So the three tunes, I think the three tunes for me, I realized all are their own little flow charts and overlapping Venn diagrams. They represent other things bigger than just the tunes, So maybe the first one, the Dilla beat.
Okay.
Would be great. We listen to it just a few seconds, maybe it'd be cool.
Yeah.
We can speed through.
What your mouth don't say, baby, your thighs do. I want us to arrive together. I love it when the weather is wet and sticky. Some depict me as being conscious. Yeah, I use my head.
So good.
I can just listen on and on and on and on.
That's such a vibe.
I would say, yeah, the vibe. Yeah, I mean, first, this tune, what it stands for me is black music, and a lot like Jonathan's story. My family listened to a lot of Sam Cooke and Ray Charles and Platters and all the old doo-wop stuff. So I was raised on music that was accessible, but was incredibly soulful and prepared me for these sounds. It's probably like almost specifically and only Ray Charles and Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Wonder's fault, that. And honestly, Sam Cooke and the Platters, that stuff was really, really big for me. So when I got a little older and into some social stuff and started accepting recommendations from friends in grade school, I got really into Tribe Called Quest. And my first rap album was Shaq Diesel by Shaquille O'Neal, and I maintain that it was not awful. It was not awful.
That shit slaps.
It was all right.
It was all right.
And the Roots, Mos Def and Talib Kweli, Black Star, MF Doom. So I got hip to a lot of hip hop along the way, and I think that helped prepare me for the feeling of jazz music, and to be able to understand jazz music through a certain lens. And I found it strange that, given though that my career and my main interests in what I teach every day is jazz, that I didn't actually put a jazz tune in there. But I figured that first track, composed by the famous producer and beat maker J Dilla. I mean, this is where I'll just start firing off all the overlapping Venn diagrams, right? So in this track that J Dilla composed, it's like one of the premier examples of compositional sampling, and you can hear the crackle of the vinyl. All of those sounds or most of those sounds, if not all of them, were taken from an Isley Brothers track. It involves new vocals by D'Angelo, who is one of my favorite artists of all time. D'Angelo was heavily involved in a recording group of friends called the Soulquarians, and that involved Erykah Badu and one of my favorite trumpet players of all time, Roy Hargrove. So this tune and the compositions of J Dilla and the peer group of the Soulquarians that involve people like Erykah Badu and Common, who's rapping on this tune, hip hop MCs, producers, instrumentalists, like everything I love comes together, you know? And now that we're this age, we're not that far away from those people. You know, I think we all have friends who are friends with those people, or you might have all bumped some elbows with those folks in your life. But to me, this is a kind of a symbol of not only the Black music that gets full credit for my involvement in music, period, but just the way that that tune and these cultivated new gifts to music were cultivated by peer groups and friends. Like you were saying, that Willie Nelson quote, right? And I think each of the other examples as well. If you want to listen to a few seconds of maybe that Dillinger Escape Plan tune.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Changes. I don't know. Not to keep the time changes. Like,
yeah, right. Try counting that.
Yeah. So this is where I would have quit playing drums with the first like 4 seconds.
So I grew up in a real grungy little town, honestly. Like not a very big place, but really close to Haverhill, really close to Lowell and Lawrence, near Manchester, New Hampshire. It was not a very glamorous place. But a lot of the music that kids were making and young adults were making was stuff like that. So even though I was lucky to have classical and jazz education and experiences by way of school and mentors, like boots on the ground, like that was the music happening accessibly for me to make. So I had a guitar. My memories with a guitar are kind of, as they go back now, almost as far as with the trumpet. And for instance, like my first day of 6th grade, right? You know, at that point, I was still tucking my t-shirt into my pants, parting my hair. And I get on the bus holding my trumpet in my like 40-pound backpack. And there's kids smoking. And this type of music is blasting through the speakers on a bus. It was like out of a movie. I was scared to death. I was scared to death. But after a little while, my ears just got used to it. And I started associating with certain people. When I made friends with those people and started to maybe feel safe going to a show like this, it was kind of a crazy first experience. I noticed that what really struck me was that there are, this is how I discovered scenesterism. You know, there are scenes for things like this. There are a group of people, there are groups of people like me everywhere, and they come together and they just listen to music together. So going to shows to see bands like this, local groups, Boston groups, regional bands, it was my first experience as a concert goer in small clubs, dingy places. So it's where I fell in love with spray paint and unconventional smells, and being around people of all different kinds and sizes, and realizing that something gritty and dirty on its surface is incredibly complex. As when I was joking around, it's like try to count through that. As a young kid in music school, who also was finding some fascination with music like this was where I learned that it was more about breathing in and out with the music and appreciating it on a macro level, raised a little bit from its like details of counting and tapping and technique. So this is what got me comfortable. Music like this prepared me to listen and breathe through Elvin Jones drum solos with John Coltrane. If my ears could get used to this, then I don't think I could really complain about not liking anything else anymore. So it prepared me to have the patience and understanding to get into avant-garde improvisation, or like classical music like Arnold Schoenberg or Albanberg, or a lot of the classical music I like, Penderecki, are things
I've
that...
met him.
Really?
I've met him.
You met Penderecki?
I met Penderecki.
Very cool. Did you guys play some of his music, or did you meet him almost accidentally by way
No,
of
I met
something
him because we were playing his music on a trip to Poland. It was my first time out of the United States. Poland,
Beautiful.
Warsaw. There he was. It's like, wow.
What an experience. So and this grungy hardcore, thrashing music there, I think it prepared me to accept music like that. So let's listen to maybe a little bit of that final one. And
Okay.
So that's by, I love that. That's by a band called Bing, B-I-N-G, Bing and Ruth. And it's led by a pianist composer named David Moore. And that ensemble's related to me by way of one of my dearest and best friends played in that group for years and years. And to me, this was a really nice example of jazz musicians or jazz ethics and improvisation and classical musicians and that tradition really being combined. That's only 2 or 3 measures of melody for that 3-minute track, just repeated over and over with different iterations of space between each, different lengths of space between each iteration of melody. And all the instrumentalists are looking at the full score and can hop around in any part that they wish. And timbrally can change anything that they wish, slide in and out of notes in any way they want. But for a guy who's often around trumpets and saxophones and loudspeakers and the grittiness of guitars, when I'm around those things, I really miss clarinets and upright basses and cellos. Mm-hmm. When I'm around those things for a long time, I really miss the grittiness of guitars and kick drums that punch you in the chest. But this was a nice, I've enjoyed this because for someone who also really loves the works of like Beethoven and Mahler and those guys always seem to write, and their music sounds like an ideal, a picture of the world, or not of this world. But I really like music like this, because I think texturally it can be similar and overlaps in traditions. But it's not really about an ideal. It's more about like little slivers and ways of looking at the way the world is, you know, kind of monotonous, repetitive, kind of have to look fairly closely to find details to surprise us in a lot of things. So not only by way of peer group, but this combines classical music and improvisation for me. Knowing these guys and having seen them play, and knowing that since they're kind of a new age classical improvised ensemble, self-led, self-composed, they're not subsidized in any way. They play in tiny little rock clubs. They play in dark warehouses with one light bulb on them, you know? So the world of CBGB's rock club and like the hardcore music and that street element of that rock and roll music and the street element of jazz music and the origins and the social nature of jazz music, like even though that what we just listened to is so like markedly different in style and aesthetic, like all those folks spend equal amount of times in small, dingy little unglamorous places trying to make this beautiful music happen, you know? So I think what really strikes me about all of this, and I realized picking these 3 tunes, is that it's all about peer group and the company you keep and allowing overlapping Venn diagrams of influence rather than trying to keep everything traditionally separate.
And community.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
Right.
And look at our Zoom chat is another perfect example, and the
Right.
collaboration at large between Still Gold and BSO is a perfect example.
True.
Absolutely. Thank you all so very much. That was like,
thank you. That was beautiful.
Incredible. Oh,
we didn't get to hear some of your favorites though.
Oh yeah. For me, I can play a really quick snippet here of something. Mr. Magic by Grover Washington Jr. was one of the first jazz songs that I learned to play and improvise on. One of my best friends, Dustin Slater, we met when we were playing baseball together in like 8th grade, and he played at his grandparents' church, and I used to just go to church with them and play. And he would just kind of show me how to take what I'm hearing and apply it to my saxophone, because he was a piano player. So Mr. Magic was like one of our first like jazz band type of songs I learned to play.
a very Steely Dan-ish.
Yeah, absolutely. It just makes me think of like Detroit smooth jazz. Like it's what I grew up listening to. My dad listened to a lot of smooth jazz. Grover Washington Jr.'s sound. I felt like it gave me a sense of saxophonist as centerpiece and not just auxiliary. Growing up in band, I'm in marching band, I'm in symphonic band, I'm in jazz band, I'm in all of these different bands, and saxophone for the longest felt like it was a part of this obviously bigger machine, but this auxiliary piece. Like you focus on the vocalist or you focus on these other components. And this, I think, listening to Grover Washington and then also this particular song just gave me the like validation that this instrument can be centerpiece, that you as a saxophonist, you may not need to be a singer or a vocalist or anything like that, but you can, your instrument in itself is a melodic part of you, and that you can use it to say something and to talk without necessarily using particular words.
The next lesson to get as a jazz musician too, that it's okay to make music people actually like. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's just fun, puts a smile on people's faces and so forth. So it's, it's something that also was like, it was a moneymaker. It was like the standard that we played when we go to play at a restaurant or to play it like at a festival. It's like, oh, there we go. We can throw Mr. Magic in there, and it's gonna be a crowd pleaser for sure. So.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so very much. We are at the end of our time for the call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes.
Thanks. That was a lot of fun.
That was. Nice to meet you, Bonnie.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I hope we run into each other in real life.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yes. And thank you to the BSO for hosting this, and shout out to Still Gold for also the collaboration and the opportunity for us to have these conversations. We will be doing additional conversations moving forward, so be on the lookout for that. And again, thank you, Bonnie, Chris, and John for your time and your perspectives and stories. So have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thanks, cats.
See ya.
All right.
Right. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.